Hey guys, it's Lori Poole. I'm here to talk to you today about filling your calendar with your annual sales and marketing plan. So for those of you who don't know me and my husband Jeff, we run Indigo Silver Studio out of Wilmington, North Carolina. We're wedding and portrait photographers, but we also like to give back to the community and try and help educate people on business and growing their business, growing their studios, and that is through our sister business, The Shoot Space. So we'd love for you to look us up, send us a message, send us an email, let us know how you're enjoying these Business Corner articles so far. So this is me and Jeff. We're photographers, we're educators. We also like to say that we're real, which means we don't try and put too much fluff. We don't try and promise that we have all the answers, but we definitely want to share with you things that we've learned along the way and help you avoid some of the mistakes that we made early on in our business. So starting with the big picture, this is something that we talked about a little bit in the article. I am going to do a brief review of the article, but I'm also going to assume that you read it, so I'm not going to go too deep into the article before we get to the good stuff, which is the bonus content that you're watching this video for. In any case, so this is a basic breakdown of how both home studios and retail studios tend to spend their money. So if you look at the whole pie, that is the total gross sales that each of these studios makes. If you'll notice, the home studio pie is a little smaller than the retail studio pie because retail studios do tend to gross more income. However, that being said, between these two studios, the home studio will actually keep a larger portion of the pie for their owner's compensation and net profit. So if you're a home studio, just know that you should be aiming to take home around 45% of every dollar you make. If you're a retail studio, about 35%. Obviously, if you can do more, that's better. But if you're performing less than these benchmarks, then you definitely want to work on those areas. Now, what we talked about in the article is that you want to start off your year by having a total sales goal, or a total income goal. And the example that we gave was, let's say that you decided that, first of all, we're going to assume that you're a home-based studio. You can do the math differently if you're a retail-based studio. But if you're a home-based studio taking home 45% of your profits, and let's say that you decided you wanted to take home $75,000. Well, in order to take home $75,000, then of course you need to actually make more than that. So if we divide 75,000 by 0.45 for 45%, you retail studios will divide by 0.35, then your gross sales target comes out to $166,667. Now, this is something that we've been touching on pretty regularly in the Business Corner, is this idea of having a goal and having something to work toward. But we took it one step further this month to talk about, okay, well, that's all fine, well, and good to say that by the end of the year, we want to make 167, rounding up. But let's say that we wanted to get a little bit more specific and talk about, well, what do we want to make per month? So if you take that 166,667 and divide that by 12, that brings it down to a monthly sales target of $13,889. So that's going to be kind of the foundation of what we're talking about this month, is having that monthly target and making sure that you're meeting that monthly target, and looking at different months throughout the year to see how you're doing. Okay, so the first thing that we recommend is, if you've been in business for a year, what we want you to do is, using your accounting software or your CRM, plot out a graph that shows your entire sales each month for the course of the past year. And your monthly sales trends will look something like this. Obviously, everyone's is going to look a little bit different, but you should be able to spit out some kind of bar graph with totals for each month. So what you see when you're looking at this is you want to look at, where are the high months? I'm seeing the highest month on this graph is right here at November. That's our peak month. And the lowest month for this imaginary photographer is the very next month in December. Got a handful of low months in here. You've got one in December, September, July was a bit low, April was a bit low. And then you have some that are well above the average, so February, August, October, and November are quite a bit higher than the average. Now remember that we are working with the law of averages, so it's not that every month on this chart needs to be above that goal of 13,000 and some change. It would be great if it were, but just know that you are going to have some high months, you are going to have some low months, so long as your average is averaging out to that $13,000 goal or whatever you set your personal goal to, then by the end of the year, you should be making the income that you want. So that's the first thing that we want to see, is just take an overall look. Look at where the high months are, look at where the low months are. Now, the next thing that you want to do is try and make some sense of what it is that you're looking at. So if this is what your studio's total income looks like, then what are we seeing? Why was October and November so high, but the months on either side of it so low? So you want to think about what's going on in your business and in your personal life that might be affecting those high months and low months. For example, I know that if I'm going to be out of the studio 2 or 3 weeks out of a month, perhaps I'm going on vacation, or it's convention season and we're traveling a lot, obviously those months are going to be a little bit harder for me to meet my goals. So I'm going to have to either adjust or figure out how to cram a lot of business into 1 week in order to make sure I'm not falling short those months. The other thing is you want to look at, why are you having the high months? Are the high months due to seasonality? Perhaps you're a wedding photographer, and I know in Wilmington, for example, and we're going to talk about this a little bit more later in this article or video, but I know in Wilmington, our peak months are May and October. We have a strong spring, a strong fall. Winter basically sucks, and summer is somewhere in the middle. So you want to try and figure out why you're seeing the trends that you're seeing. And if you can explain them, then that should give you a point of action on how to fix where those low months are. If it's due to seasonality, how can you fill it in? If it's due to traveling, what can you do to prepare? So you want to try and come up with some kind of answers for what you're seeing, and that way you can make more informed decisions on how you run your business. Now, that being said, what are some of the things that we can do to fill in these gaps? Well, one of the things that we talked about in the article is finding out a way to spread out payments. And you can do this a couple of different ways. Jeff and I are wedding photographers, as I mentioned, and for us, May and October are our 2 biggest months. And the majority of wedding clients, before we figured this little trick out, the majority of our wedding clients were paying off their balance right before their wedding, which is what our contract stipulates. And so what we were seeing is April and May would be great, and September and October would be great. But then, winter time, we have no weddings coming in. It's just prior to booking season. There's basically the well would dry up. We would have no money whatsoever. We started calling it ramen noodle season. And what we figured out is that the valleys that we had ended up being about 4 months prior to our peaks. So wintertime that wintertime valley would be right before the springtime peak. But we also noticed that we had a little bit of valley right in the middle of summer, right around, June, July area, and that would be right before the October rush. So we rewrote our contract to say that our clients now have to pay a certain amount, certain percentage of their balance 4 months prior to their wedding date. That helps them spread their payments out. It actually makes it easier on them. It actually kind of improved our sales because they weren't having to pay such a huge chunk all at once. But obviously, the biggest goal there was to spread that money out. So that's what this graph is showing, is imagine that you could lop off some of these peaks and use that same money to fill in some of those valleys. How would that even out your year? So changing your payment structure obviously is one idea. Another idea that you can implement is some sort of payment plan. So you can, for example, wedding albums is something that we offer a payment plan. We allow our clients to pay on their wedding album for up to 12 months after the wedding, so that they're able to spread out that money even further. This actually helps us out in a couple of ways. One, it helps our clients be able to purchase something that they may not have been able to afford had they had to pay for it all at once. So therefore, it's actually helping our bottom line because we're selling more. And then two, of course, again, we're having those regular payments come in every month, we'll wake up on the first of each month and have an email with all of the automatic payments that have run that morning. So it does help spread that money out throughout the year as well. The other thing you can do is some sort of pre-purchase plan. So this is something that I do with my boudoir clients. I actually incentivize them to choose and pay for their products prior to their session, and I offer some incentives on how they do that and, what kinds of things that they pay for. But basically, they're spreading out their payments in the 3 or 4 months leading up to their session, which again is spreading that money out instead of having it be all the month of their session. So just think of different ways that you can incentivize, encourage, or require your clients to pay you money throughout the year instead of one lump sum, and that will help spread out those peaks and valleys. Now, the other thing that you can do, and this is getting to the bonus content in this video, is think about marketing events. So if we look at the 3 lowest months of the year, let me jump back 2 slides so that you can see it without any extra graphics on there. If we look at the 3 lowest months here, I'm seeing right off the bat December, September, and April for this imaginary photographer's scenario. Those 3 months are the ones that I think need the most help. Now, the other thing is that if you were to add up the total sales for this photographer, it would come in at around 150 and some change. And remember that this photographer's goal was to make it to 167. So we're really only, I think it was actually 151 and some change. So we're really only about $15K shy of the annual goal. Now, you could take $15,000 and spread it out over 12 months and add a little bit to each month. That would be one way of getting to your goal. But the other way is to take that $15K and just lump that into the months where you're the slowest, because those months where you're bringing in a little less, while we're working with averages, it also means that those months you have a little less take-home pay for yourself because your overhead doesn't change. The amount that you're having to pay for rent and utilities and insurance and all of that doesn't change when you have a low month. So where you end up suffering is in your personal pocket. So those are going to be the months that we want to attack first. So if we took that $15K, divided it by 3, and said, okay, we need to add $5,000 to these 3 months. Now look at how that graph changed compared to before. And yes, we still have some low months and we still have some high months, but it's much more even. And of course, we've achieved the ultimate goal, which is meeting that 167,000 sales goal. So that's the idea, is you want to come up with, 2 to 3 months where you notice that you're really struggling and come up with some sort of marketing plan to help you fill in those gaps. So, different ways that you can fill that in. Think about all the different types of seasons and holidays that people might want portraits for throughout the year. Valentine's Day, Father's Day, Mother's Day, summer minis, fall minis. You can build specialty sets. If there's not a holiday that's coming up, you can just say, hey, I'm running this specialty thing. Boudoir minis, holiday sessions, the list goes on. So look at your calendar, look at the months where you're short, and figure out what is some kind of session that I can do that would help me fill in those gaps. And here's what we decided. So this graph is actual real numbers. This is my and Jeff's sales from 2015. And if you remember, I told you that, the majority of our business is in the fall, but we spread some of those payments out through the summer. And we have a few weddings in the spring, and we spread those payments out, but it's still on the tails was really low. Now, ignore December for a minute, and I want you to imagine that this continued to drop off so that we're down here in December, and then the next January comes around and we're right back here again. So really, from about November through April is a pretty dry season for us. That's our ramen noodle season. And in 2015, I decided that I wanted to do something about it. I was looking at our graph and looking at that just big valley that we have from November through April and trying to think, how can I fill that in? Well, when you're thinking of these marketing events, you have to think a couple of months ahead of time. So I knew that my goal was to have money coming in, especially December and January were like our worst months. So what is something that comes right after December and January that I could create a marketing event for? And what I came up with was a boudoir session, mini session event that was just in time for Valentine's Day. So what I did that year is I started marketing for a one-day event. And you guys as photographers, you already know what this is. You know what mini sessions are. This is a one-day thing where you pack in a bunch of sessions back to back to back. It's volume sales, move them in, move them out, make a whole bunch of money, and then call it quits. So it's a little bit different than your standard portrait session where you do the consultations beforehand and you have a specialized thing and you go wherever they want to. This is like all in one place. You know, everybody gets the same thing, more of a volume style thing. And the way that I set it up is that I decided that I could photograph up to 8 boudoir sessions in a day. Now, to be honest, I probably could photograph more than that, but I would die by the end of the day. Boudoir takes a lot of energy for me because I'm really like pouring myself into my clients and keeping their energy up so that they don't get in their heads. And so I was basically scheduling them for half-hour sessions, but scheduling buffer time on either side because they needed to get dressed, get undressed, all that kind of thing. So basically, I was scheduling them in hour slots. And 8 hours, long enough day. Add in another hour for lunch, so it's a 9-hour day, 8 clients. That was kind of my logic. So I started this in 2015 where I opened up 8 slots on one day. The session actually occurs in January because we want to have enough time to photograph all the sessions in January. Then over the course of the next week, obviously download the images, process them, get them ready for sales, and get the client back in for in-person sales. So even though this is a mini session, I am still doing in-person sales with this. And then the client would come in for in-person sales. Then, of course, I have 8 people for which I now need to retouch their images, design their products, place their orders, and get their orders back in time for Valentine's Day. So you can start to see how, while this is a Valentine's Day themed event, this is definitely something that has more lead up than just a one-day thing. In any case, I've been doing this now for 4 years. 2019 was our 4th year. And in 2019, we booked five women for this one-day event. So I don't worry as much if my calendar doesn't fill up because even though they're mini sessions, I am targeting higher-end clients. So I booked 5 clients for mini sessions on one day, and my total sales was $95.82. So that's a $10,000 paycheck in the middle of January when historically our sales have always been really low. This is a pretty good thing to me. I'm happy with that. I know some people that do mini session events that make way more than that, but what I'm trying to tell you guys is that this is something that you can do. It's actually not that hard. To talk a little bit about how we structured it, my goal is I didn't want it to be the kind of stereotypical mini session where it's like a 10-minute session and you get a bunch of files and it's a flat rate and you're out the door. I still wanted it to be a flat rate, but with Boudoir, I didn't want to devalue the brand that I currently have and target the bargain hunters, but I did want to catch people that either hadn't planned ahead for Valentine's Day or just felt like this might be a more affordable way to do Boudoir. So the Boudoir sessions, over the years, I've inched the price up and inched it back down and kind of found my sweet spot to be just shy of $600. So I usually set it for around $575. That includes professional hair and makeup done on site. So I am partnering with a local hair and makeup artist, and I use the same girl every year, so that this is sort of like an annual event that we now have. So hair and makeup is done on site. So one girl is in hair and makeup while the next girl is already in their session, and they rotate through, and that's how we're able to keep people moving throughout the day. Hair and makeup included. It's a half-hour session. I've now actually, this year, I've decided to have them have an add-on where a half-hour session is one outfit, but they can upgrade to a 40-minute session and do 2 outfits for like an additional $75, I think. And I think all of my clients except for one took advantage of that. So that was an easy upsell for 10 more minutes. If you remember, I'm scheduling these in hour blocks, so there wasn't any time lost for me to do that. So they're doing the hair and makeup, the session, they're extending their session, and then I usually include one small product in that price. Now, the product this year was an 8x8 folio from our sponsor, Lab Millers. And the way that I designed it, it had one image on the front, one image on the inside left, one image on the inside right. That's it. So this folio has 3 images. So theoretically, you could come in for $575, get your hair and makeup done, have your shoot, and walk out with your folio with 3 images. But I also made it known that they could upgrade their products, excuse me, that they could upgrade their products to any of our full-size products as well. And again, the majority of my clients did that. So they're either upgrading to an album or a portrait box or the complete set of digital files. In any case, they're upgrading because the 3 images isn't enough. So it's something tangible that they feel like they get to take home. And when they book, they might think 3 images is enough because most women sadly are convinced that they're not going to like more than 3 images of themselves anyway. And then when they see them, they want more. So they're upgrading their product, and I'm getting an average spend of just shy of $2,000 per person for a mini session event. To help drum this up, I have a secret Facebook group for anybody who's ever inquired about boudoir. They get invited to the group. I also obviously am sending this out via email, and I'm also working with my partners. So obviously the hair and makeup artist, but I have several other businesses that I co-market with in town where I'm bringing them postcards and inviting them to give out those marketing cards to their clients. And obviously I do the same for them. I ask them if they want to put any kind of swag or marketing material in my goodie bags, and I give all the clients that come in that day a goodie bag full of business cards and makeup samples and, just little things like that. So I'm leveraging the partner marketing to help get the word out, and then obviously still using my own marketing channels as well. So this is something that, when you spread that out over the course of the couple of months that it takes to plan this, it really does boost that winter season for us. So if you think about it this way, Valentine's Day is February 14th, but the clients obviously need their products prior to that if they're going to give it as a gift on Valentine's Day, which means by early February is when we need to have all of the products in from the lab and packaged and ready for client pickup. In order to have those products ready by early February, that means by the end of January, I need to have completed all of the in-person sales, which means in order to do that, I'm shooting in mid-January. So already from there, we've worked from mid-February back to mid-January just from shoot to product delivery. Now, any of you that have ever done an event like this, you know that this takes time to market. This isn't something that, January 5th, for example, I can decide to run a Facebook ad, drop off a bunch of postcards, and hope that I will book this thing out over the next 5 days. It just doesn't work that way. So you need to have time for your marketing to be out there, for people to be exposed to it and see it over and over again. So I actually plan for my marketing to go live no later than mid-December. So that means by mid-December, I'm already posting about it in my Facebook group. I'm already dropping off those flyers for everybody and asking everyone else to co-market. I'm sending out emails via MailChimp and trying to get people interested that way. So my marketing needs to be live by mid-December to make sure that I book out in time for my January shoot. Now, in order for marketing to go live in mid-December, that means I really need to have my act together and be planning this as early as November, if not earlier. So you need to plan out the logistics of your event, find your marketing partners, approach them about partnering with you, design your marketing collateral, your postcards, your emails, all that kind of stuff. You need to be designing that probably 2 to 3 months in advance of your session. So as far as planning goes, this is something that needs to start being planned as early as November, if not earlier. Depends how ahead of the ball you like to be. But as far as, getting back to the point of bringing income in, remember that these sessions are happening mid-January, which means all throughout December and January, I am taking people's retainer payments, so that initial $575 that they put down to be a part of this, that's coming in throughout that time. And then, of course, in early February is when the upsales are coming in as well. So I've really got about 3 months of income that is being spread out for this $10,000 event that I'm spreading out into those months that are historically so low for me. So this has been a really great thing for me and Jeff, who, prior to this, our main source of income was weddings, which was highly seasonal. It's how we filled in the gaps. Incidentally, I decided that I loved boudoir so much that this is now what I do full time. So it actually started from this event right here. But this is just one example of how you can design an event to help fill in those gaps and help bring in money over the course of a couple of months during your slow seasons. So I hope that gave you guys some great ideas. I hope that got the ball rolling for you. Obviously, not everyone here is a boudoir photographer, but like we talked about in the article, there's lots of different ways that you can come up with a marketing event that is tailored to your business, whether you do seniors, babies, weddings, families, whatever the case may be. So again, here is our contact information. I'd love to hear from you if this article and this video gave you any kind of ideas, if it sparked something for you. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. All of our photography education is through the ShootSpace portal, so you can email me at info@theshootspace.com. Hit us up on social media, visit our website. We'd love to hear from you and see what you guys think about what we've been talking about so far. All right, you guys, I think that's it. I hope this has been helpful for you, and we will see you next month. Bye.